Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video, we're going to take a look at bifurcated color schemes, such as those you would find on heraldry of medieval and all sorts of models where you want that kind of two color schemes, like one side is one color and another side is another color. We're going to use this Cawdor model from Necromunda. He's been given a prime of Wraithbone using the Citadel Wraithbone spray primer. We're going to use Iyanden yellow. This is the Citadel Contrast, and basically what we're going to do is we're just going to start off picking a middle point, and thankfully on these models they have a seam line that you can kind of use as a guide. And with that, we're going to begin laying this color down. Now, initially I laid a little bit down, not too heavily, but you can see I allow it to pool up in a little bit of areas, just very subtly. And you can see again I'm following just basically the little seam line on the model. Now again, when you are picking out an area, let's say for example like this cloth, I pretty much just found a halfway point and then just basically drew the brush through that surface. Now you want to keep your hand fairly light. You want to try and make sure that your brush is remaining mostly perpendicular to that surface so that you can maintain a straight even line as you draw your way across, and you should be able to fill that area out nicely. Here you can see I laid a little bit too much contrast down, so I just quickly rinse off the brush and use the brush like a little sponge and soak up that excess pigment in those areas, allowing just a little bit to pool up as creates a little bit of visual interest. You can see like on the cloth there I left a little bit in the folds, and I'm okay with that, as when I lay the red down it will be fine. Spoiler alert, I'm going to use red, Blood Angels red contrast to be exact. And this is going to be our color scheme for these Cawdor models, and as you can see it's kind of like Howling Griffin's Space Marines with the red and yellow, and I went with this nice bright vibrant red, and I take a little bit onto my brush and begin laying it down. I concentrate mostly on creating that line, that separation between the two colors. I lay the brighter color down first so that if there's any errors, the deeper color can cover that up fairly easily. So with these other layers, as we're applying them onto the model, again, it's pretty straightforward. It's only just a few areas where we really have to concentrate on keeping the color scheme separate. On other model surfaces, it is pretty straightforward. Again, I would highly recommend you use the brighter color first and then apply your deeper color. It's just so that if you need to correct, it's pretty straightforward. Here you can see I'm just simply drawing the excess moisture out, the excess contrast out of the folds and such. Here, basically the models, the way it's sculpted allows us to use that as a guide for where the two colors will meet. I've seen other examples of this model where basically the color continues on through the body shirt. I don't know what you would call that. I also forgot the underside of the cloth there, so I'll just end up hitting that later on. Now, with that, you can just leave it and, carry on with your day, or we can use some Wraithbone base paint, and we're going to use a dry brush here. I'm going to slap a little bit down to our palette, use our dry brush, make sure most of that paint has been removed, and we're going to dry brush the entirety of these areas. We're going to do it on top of the red as well as the yellow. I'm going to try and very carefully catch the face mask as well and the loincloth, but you can see my brush stroke is mostly in an upward direction from the edge of the, I don't know what that's called on his shoulders there, the cowl. Basically, we're going to run it in that kind of direction, concentrating most of the color at the bottom portion, and as well, we're trying to create that, define that edge. Try not to hit too much on the red areas and the yellow, like on the shoulders, as I don't want it to go too far gone, but I end up getting a little carried away, and so I lay a little bit too much color down. But we're using the same color on both areas just to really, kind of bring out those edges. Now, you could stop there and, leave it as such, or we can come back in with some Iyanden yellow with a bit of contrast medium. We're going to thin it down roughly in a 1-to-1, even 2 medium to 1 pigment is fine. What we're really looking to do here is to just re-establish the saturation of color onto these areas. So where the dry brushing was picked up, that will get tinted back to yellow. And if you happen to lay a little bit more yellow down into some deeper recesses, I think that's okay as well, because again, it will give you a bit of a deeper shadow. So it's not going to be a huge issue. You can see we're slapping a little bit more onto the face as well, and we're going to come back to that in a moment. So the yellow is done, and we're going to come in with the red. Again, you can pretty much stop at any one of these points where you're happy with the results. If you just want to lay the contrast down and go, hey, you know what, it's done. Or if you want to take it a little bit further, create a little bit more color depth, bring out some of the more details on a model, by all means, do as you like. Again, it's kind of a 1-to-1 mix ratio with the Blood Angels red and the contrast. Again, we're not looking to really overly saturate the areas of the model, especially with this red because it is so rich. And we're just looking to work this on top of where we had applied the highlight. And as you may have noticed, as I was working my way around the model here, I did end up hitting an area of yellow on his collar, right about where his face mask is red. You can see we hit the collar. Oh no, right there. That's what I'm talking about. How do we correct mistakes? Well, really quickly here, I'm going to grab a bit of Wraithbone, apply it right on top of the area, and I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to fix this little cowl face mask thing here. I want to bring a little bit more definition to that detail, so I said, you know what? Heck with it. I am going to apply some more color there. Then I come back in with the end in yellow and apply it over the yellow areas, and I'm pretty much good to go. Now, of course, when you're working on your own model, you can push this as far as you like. You can layer your highlights and then come back in and resaturate the areas, but that is doing a bifurcated color scheme on a model using Cawdor as our example. Big thank you to all my patrons who help make this possible. And so if you're considering patron support, huge thank you. And if you enjoy these video series, please consider subscribing and becoming a patron as well.